Jason Keogh, the Director of Agency Services for Fusion, and today I'm welcoming Lee Barrett, the Director of Ancillary Revenue for Viva Aerobus. Lee's been with Viva Aerobus for over 4 years, and he's led the airline to the top of the list of ancillaries or add-on product revenue. So thank you so much for spending some time with us today. I really appreciate it. So Viva Aerobus is number 2 across all airlines in ancillary or add-on revenue. What are you doing differently or better than most of the other airlines to be in that position?
Sure. Well, I mean, better is a relative term. I think we are doing things differently, that's for sure. And differently for us means we're looking at new and interesting ways to use technology in order to drive value for our customers, but also to improve revenue. So I think when you have those two things together, it's a pretty solid strategy. On the other hand, I also think that we are supported by a really great senior leadership team who are willing to try new things. There are no sacred cows in our business, you know. Just because something has been there for a long time or it's a favorite doesn't mean it doesn't have to justify its existence, and we are willing to make tough calls. So I think that discipline with that focus of improving the customer experience and at the same time keeping revenue in a laser focus on revenue, that's probably what's given us that additional boost over other airlines.
So what do you think you need to do to get to number 1? Is there anything different?
Well, it's all,
more of the same?
Yeah, no, I joke with my boss all the time. You know, I say we're number 2. He says, why not number 1? So, no, it's definitely on our radar. Look, I think that will come, humbly speaking. We respect a lot, our competitors. We look at what they're doing. We take the lessons we can see from their products experience, their marketing and merchandising, and we see what we can apply it to ours. But we also look for creative solutions outside the box. We have to, for us to really improve our revenue, we really need to grow our business. So right now we're predominantly a Mexican domestic airline. We have a small footprint in the United States. But as we grow in volume, as we grow in capacity, in number of aircraft, I think, and stage length, which is a huge factor, we'll add new things. So the likes of duty-free, the likes of in-flight entertainment, all of what I would probably call third-tier ancillary products. And I think that's where opportunity is for us to grow now. Our funnel is really well developed. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we still have opportunity there, but in terms of where the real growth is, it's the third-tier ancillary, like I said, the in-flight retail, in-flight entertainment, and then, of course, whatever we can leverage through AI, through personalization, optimization, and how we can use that to drive our business growth. I think that will take us where we need to be.
Oh, great. So what did it take to adopt a testing culture within Viva Aerobus?
It was surprisingly easy. I think when you're when you get an idea, when you explore an idea, like bringing in a third-party provider to adopt testing strategies and to start looking at optimization, you have to do 2 things. One is you have to have a fairly flexible agreement, because there's a lot of nervousness around passing the control of your business, particularly your ancillary funnel. And for a lot of people, that's the most lucrative part of their business, especially in low-cost airlines, as well as having, I think, a framework that you have with the various parts of the business that show you where your sandpit is, where you can play, where you're not going to interfere with what other people are doing in the organization. So it removes the threat, it removes the fear and the threat that new partners are coming in to start doing testing and making optimization recommendations on your business without interfering with other areas like revenue management and so on like that. So those were the 2 things that we worked hard to develop when we came on with Fusion. First one was having flexibility in our agreement, so that we maintain the control. We were the ones that said yes or no to the decisions, or to the strategies. We had We drive the overall strategy, so we give the points that we're looking to improve, whether it's customer experience, whether it's in funnel, whether it's price or merchandising. We determine that. Of course, we use the recommendations of the Fusion analyst or the optimization strategist, correct? But at the end of the day, we build that roadmap together, and then we develop a framework with our partners in revenue management. So if we have a test that's successful, what do we do with that? Do we sit internally and endlessly discuss it and get the lag effect, or do we have an agreement in advance that if we meet these criteria, or if the test is positive revenue and doesn't impact core conversion, do we just get on with it, promote that test, and move on to the next one? And I think those are the critical parts. Those are the most contentious and the most critical parts that you have to solve in order to create the culture. Mm-hmm. The third thing I would just mention is that obviously the positive revenue reinforces the value of testing. So once you have convinced people that testing is the right way to go, once you start delivering on revenue, that pretty well enforces the decision, and then it gets a lot more.
So let's talk a little bit about AI. How are you using AI today, and how do you see it benefiting not only Viva Aerobus, but the airline industry as a whole? Well,
I think, AI is an interesting concept. AI is a great tool. And as I understand it, and I'm not an AI expert, but certainly have some experience with it, it's what you do with that tool that makes a difference. And there will be airlines that have AI that don't use it as well as they could, and there'll be airlines that have little AI and use it to its maximum capacity, which is maximum effect, and that's a great thing. In the case of Viva, we have been using AI provided by Fusion in order to drive the speed of testing that we do. So we know testing is creating a new lever for us to be able to improve ancillary revenue. That's great. Pricing the products at the right price at the right time, that's a wonderful thing. What we don't yet have is ability to run limitless amounts of tests as quickly as we'd like to. And that probably gets a lot more pressure from our leadership. Once they see the revenue value from a successful test, they see a strategy, it's tested, it's successful, it's promoted, that's a 28-day period of time. It was a 28-day period of time. So you look at 12 tests a year, 10 to 12 tests a year, each one of those tests proving it generally proves a positive result. But what if you could do 24? What if you could do 56? What if you could do 100? That's where the pressure comes, because it's a really great, it opens really great opportunities. And once people start seeing the potential, all we want to do is test. AI allows us to run more tests faster, and that generates more revenue. It allows us to exploit more revenue faster, and that's why we use AI. So what we're doing in very, very basic terms is taking a traditional A/B test where each variant is allocated a certain amount of weight. We wait for a period of time before we call a test complete, and then we do the human analytics part, which looks at stripping out the variables within the result to see where the maximum effect took place, and promoting that test to the population as a 28-day cycle. With our new testing, which is multi-arm bandit testing, the algorithm or the AI is determining which variant is performing better every day and reallocating weight towards that variant. So eventually what you see is the low performing variants are being ignored, the high performing variants are receiving more and more weight, and we're getting to statistical significance in a much faster period of time. So I gave you an example of 28 days with a traditional A/B test. Right. With the current technology that we're using, we're able to achieve a result within about half that time. So and not only that, we can test more variants because the weight is not evenly distributed. It might start the race with the same weight, but by the time you get to the end, you're supercharging your results because 1 or 2 or 3 variants are only making it to the midpoint and beyond. So, we can test up to 10 variants right now within a single test, where we were limited with A/B testing to three variants over a period of 28 days. Now it's 10 variants over a period of 10 days maximum. So, so the equivalent testing is sort of triple what we could deliver before.
So when you're doing all of these variants, are they a mix of pricing type tests and content or visual type things?
Yes, look, it's a blessing and a curse. Like I said, every time we conduct a test, we're inspired with more and more ideas of what we can test. We've been using Fusion technology for 4 years, and we're still exploiting pricing combinations. We haven't even got really deeply into merchandising opportunities or display opportunities or even predictive modeling yet, because there's still so much opportunity for us. And this is the great thing about AI.
Mm-hmm. So how does Viva Aerobus find the right mixture or balance between the number of ancillary products that you're offering on the website?
Yeah, that's also an interesting question. When I started the business, we had a fairly full inventory of a fairly full product offering, and we've stripped that away. Some things change, customers change, and things are no longer relevant, and that becomes fairly obvious. So a good example of that is we used to have a product which allowed us to send the passengers' booking details to their mobile phone. Well, with the advent of smartphones and web bookings, that sort of becomes obsolete. So, I mean, that's a no-brainer. Right. I think what you're asking here is more like, how do we know that our baggage increments are the correct size and things like that?
Right, that mixture or balance.
Exactly. Now, that's an interesting question. So, one example with Fusion's help is we've been able to identify that 4 fare products were too many. And using Fusion's professional services, we were able to determine, using statisticians as well as testing, that the optimal number of fare products for us to offer were 3. So we removed 1. We also looked at the composition of each fare product, and we were able to validate that using insights on customer behavior, customer purchase behavior, which led us to a 3 fare type product. On the other hand, with baggage, we increased from 3 baggage product options, where we were 15, 25, and 32 kilogram baggage increments, to 15, 20, 25, and 32, which was another recommendation which came from the professional services that Fusion offers. So I think we get a lot of support from Fusion in terms of determining that, because we have the data, we have information which tells us or reinforces what we should have, but historically, it was just too much data to understand how to really interpret that and get to the right answers. So I would say that there's a combination of common sense here. Also, having a relationship with a partner that's looking to exploit ancillary revenue as much as you are drives the kind of similar thinking and gets you useful recommendations like that. And useful insights that you can use to kind of streamline your product offering, which is what we do.
Do you see testing in the future, things like in-flight services, entertainment, Wi-Fi? Is that part of a future strategy for you?
Look, I think there's a place for testing anywhere where the AI can be applied, anywhere it makes sense, anywhere you have volume data. If you can use that data, my area, particularly in ancillary revenue, we're always looking to drive revenue performance, but there is an application there for customer experience, there is an application there for efficiency, and all kinds. So yes, it does make sense to apply testing in any area where you have volume data that can be examined. As for what your intention is, what are you looking to achieve by it? That's the question that every business needs to make. For the case of something like in-flight entertainment, absolutely would be useful for us to know what people are watching, what devices they're using if they're bringing their own, whether or not what period of time they're browsing for. All these kinds of things will help us understand how to fix pricing appropriately. But I think another area certainly is for in-flight retail, learning using algorithms to determine the quantities of stock that you carry on board the aircraft. What's optimal packaging look like? What's optimal loading look like? Those kind of things. And I think that has broader implications, positive implications for the business across, even outside of ancillary revenue. But it's up to every business to find a place to apply it that makes sense to them.
How does the testing process work with Fusion and Viva Aerobus? So, who has what roles there in that?
Yeah, like I said to you in the beginning when we were talking about what it is to get a culture of testing, it's really important that you define that relationship early on. And I think Fusion's been great with that, because they're not, they don't see themselves as an independent organization. They see themselves as an extension of your business, and the professional team particularly, which is really what you're buying with the Fusion product, is the professional services that you get. So I see my relationship with the Fusion team as an extension of our wider organization. I think that in our area, it's extremely collaborative. Testing strategies are designed by the strategists. They're delivered to us. Our team reviews those strategies in detail. So we send them through our UX design department, our e-commerce department, our revenue management department. Everybody signs off on a test. There are parameters within which someone can object to a test. It is our real estate, so that we're dealing with in the ancillary funnel. But certainly, if there is something that worried, some part of the testing strategy which concerns the UX department, or it's out of sync or alignment with our wider strategy, these kind of things are brought up. Once it's done, it's approved, and then the team goes away and sets the test up, delivers the tests, notifies the business that the test is in production. And then we get a regular update during the course of the testing, how the tests are performing, and when they're ready to make a call on which variant is successful. And then in our case, we developed a framework within our organization that to allow Fusion to be as efficient as possible. It's necessary, I believe, to give them the opportunity to automatically promote successful tests within reason, within a criteria. So we set a criteria of no impact to our core conversion, which we determined by a baseline, and that there is a positive revenue outcome. So those are the two requirements that we set. And if they meet those, then it's automatically promoted and advised to the business, and then the cycle continues. We start with another test. So the control is always with us. Fusion does the heavy lifting, and we work more as a partner, as a collaborator. We review the tests, we make suggestions. Like I said as well, many of the test ideas come from us. They're just things that we've always wondered how it would work for our customers, but never really had the opportunity to validate it. And of course, just putting something in production always carries its risk, and it's never more evident than when you run a test, just how risky some of those assumptions can be. So that's pretty much describes kind of the working relationship, but the control always sits with us. And certainly we've had plenty of opportunities at Fusion over the past 4 years, roughly 4 years we've been working together to grow and develop that relationship, and it's just gone from strength to strength.
Southwest has a famous tagline, "Bags fly free." Has Viva Aerobus ever considered doing something like that, something similar?
Look, we consider all kinds of things, and like I said, our senior leadership team encourages us to be as innovative as possible. But I look at it like this: we're all playing in the same market with the same toys. We all have to pay aircraft leasing fees or ownership fees. We all have to pay fuel. We all have to pay salaries. Those are not the things that distinguish us, or just what's the word? Distinguish us? No. Differentiate us. Those are not the things that differentiate us. The things, everybody's looking for something to create, let's say to stand out from the crowd. Southwest have chosen strategically to give away bags. That's their thing. In our case, we are pursuing the lowest fares in the market. Strictly, that's our primary objective. Lowest fares and to the right destinations where people want to be. Whether Southwest, how they fund the cost of carrying those bags, I'm not sure, but I certainly believe that people are paying for these things somewhere in the ticket price. It might not be immediately obvious to an individual who receives a very low cost, a very discounted fare, but somewhere along the line, those costs are being covered. In the case of Viva, we prefer to be completely unbundled and give people the opportunity to choose. And we know that that's the right decision, because 50% of our customers are traveling with unbundled fares. So we know that there is a significant portion of people out there that, whilst they appreciate the gesture of a bag, they don't need one. They would rather travel and save $20 than they would pay $20 more and carry a bag. So Yeah, I think that no disrespect to Southwest, certainly a very proud and prestigious organization. But I think you have to look at what it is you want to do to differentiate yourself, to win your to get your crown, and go with that strategy. And if that works for you, then great. And like I said, in the case of Viva, we're very confident that unbundling our fares right back to the basic flight only proposition, flight and carry-on bag, is right for us, and it's evidenced, like I said again, by the number of people who are flying with that particular ticket.
So that kind of leads into my next question about fare bundling. So how does fare bundling strategy affect the testing strategy of the a la carte ancillary products?
Yeah, so it's become fairly obvious to me that bundling is the future. And in airlines, these sort of things are very cyclical, but I don't know if it's cyclical, intentionally cyclical, or whether it's because we just get smarter and we keep going back to things that we've done in the past to try and do them better. It's a phenomenon in the aviation industry. In the case of bundling, it looks like a return to full service almost, but what we're seeing is it's not so much about bundling, it's more about offering the right combination of products to the customer and not creating a burden on the passenger going through the ancillary a la carte offer. And I think if you put it in the context of a restaurant, if you went to a restaurant and the server knew your regular and said, would you like the usual? It's a much more engaging experience than the same server passing you the menu and standing there while you go through each thing before you find your offer. And that's kind of like where I think we're going in the future with bundling, and that's using data. So in history, we put things in front of customers that we assumed that they would want. Now we're talking about putting things in front of customers that we know they want and letting them choose that, saving them the expensive energy going through the funnel and the fatigue of having to reject offers and so on and so forth, and just checking out. So a better customer experience. So I think that's really where the future is. And I think less testing will go on in the individual a la carte funnel. And I think what will happen is we'll start seeing more dynamic packaging and pricing and shrinking the ancillary funnel.
If you had advice for someone out there about their ancillary portfolio, what would it be?
Well, I think my first piece of advice was don't make assumptions. Assumptions are the killer in your organization. We have seen plenty of examples of people trying to sit in boardrooms, trying to design processes, products, services for customers without actually engaging with the customer. And that's really what testing is about doing. I mean, it is necessary to make assumptions in some cases, but don't make assumptions without validating those assumptions and making sure that they're actually true representation of your customers. There is so much opportunity to get it wrong, and that's so important now as it's becoming more competitive. People are becoming more price sensitive. People are becoming more savvy at shopping around. You have to make the right decisions for your customers, and that means involving them. So test. The second thing I would say is don't be afraid to use data to motivate your arguments inside your organization. So when you can see using data that there is a desire or a need for change, use that. It's compelling. It's important. I remember a time in my career where decisions were made because people complained about something. But it's very interesting when you put a monetary value next to that decision and you ask, how important is this now that you see that the cost of that decision is $2 million? And it changes the narrative within the organization completely. And that I challenge people to do that. I challenge people to make more data-driven decisions, more test more assumptions, and be clear on what impact your strategy is having.
How do you balance measuring customer experience tests with profitability? And more specifically, what role does profitability have in determining what to test?
It's a really good question. I don't know if the answer to that is we prioritize them, but I think the best way to answer that is to say customer always, profitability first. And what I mean by that is they're not mutually exclusive. You can have a strategy of developing a very profitable business while still putting your customer first, you know? Mm-hmm. And that means looking at ancillary products, first of all, as a value add for the customer, moving away from this mentality of punitive fees for everything. We've moved past that. It's not necessary anymore. We can still make as much money from the customer by offering them things that delight them, you know? Mm-hmm. And that's a great thing. And I think focusing on that is important. Flexibility products, for example, are a great thing to consider. You know, a customer has a product that allows them to change their flight, that allows them to change the name, something like that you can monetize. These are great things for customers to pick up that make them feel secure in their purchase and to trust you as an airline. Another thing that we looked at are things like subscription or fan-based or membership-based products. These things that make the customer feel more connected to the organization, more like a family member or a friend. And we change the way we talk to those customers. So absolutely, ancillary products don't have to be the bane of the customer's journey. It can be, and they should be, I think, in my view, something that adds value and makes the customer feel good about their engagement with you. And I think that testing different products and pricing and so on should always be driven with the firm view that if this doesn't improve the customer experience, then we shouldn't do it. Mm-hmm. Because there's enough opportunity there to make good money without impacting your customer in a negative way.
So that wraps up our conversation today with Lee Barrett from Viva Aerobus. Thanks again for chatting with us, Lee, and about your experiences. And we wish you all the best going forward.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
Great.